I'm skipping the rest of the siman, and I'm going to Hilchos Eiruv Tavshilin. Okay. Yom Tov Shechaliyos be'erev Shabbos. Tov Kuf Chav Zayin. Yom Tov Shechaliyos be'erev Shabbos. Lo yevashel b'tchila letzorech Shabbos. Don't cook with your intention for Shabbos. B'keder b'fnei atzmo. Avo mevashelu kama keder setzorech Yom Tov. You could do many pots for Yom Tov. From hoiser l'Shabbos, and the leftovers you could use for Shabbos. So you overcook for Yom Tov, and then the leftovers you could use for Shabbos. Vayidei Eiruv mevashel b'tchila l'Shabbos. And if you make an Eiruv Tavshilin, then you can cook with intent of using it for Shabbos primarily. That's the basic halacha of Eiruv Tavshilin. That you're not allowed to cook for Shabbos, but if you have leftovers, you're allowed to use it for Shabbos. Now, I'm going to belabor this point, and I'm going to read parts of this long bir halacha. This bir halacha is extremely important in understanding what's going on. I'm going to say the simple understanding without delving too deeply into things. Why does a person have to make an Eiruv Tavshilin? Because you're not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. That's an Issa D'Oraisa or an Issa D'Rabbanan. Okay, nothing like Jews. Okay. So, Ayin Mishnah Berurah, Masha Kasavnu, the Issa Hurak Midivrei Saifim, Mishum Svara Dahoyo Ve'ilu Mikle Orchem. Being that maybe Orchem will come, and I'll have to use that food for Orchem, therefore I'm allowed to cook with the intent of Shabbos because there's always a possibility of using it for Yom Tov. Where do we run into a problem with this nowadays? What's not shaykh?
People you're not expecting are going to come and knock on your door and say, have to pay your Shabbos. At least you don't have to pay Shabbos.
One second. Could you translate that word, not shaykh, into English?
What I mean
No. What did you mean it's not shaykh?
It's not at all. It's a very, very remote possibility.
But there is such a possibility.
Right, but I thought halakha as a principle does not, as a rule, consider remote possibilities.
Well, the answer to that question, it depends in what subject. Today, I happen to be learning a halacha where it says that if something is bottle, and you have 50 pieces, you should take one and give it to a guy. And we'll assume the one that you gave to the guy is the tray for one. Now, is that likely? The odds are against you. Right? 49-1, right? And yet, their opinions say that's what you should do. So it depends when you ask. There are certain things I want to attack you, not because I'm attacking you. There are certain things that the Gemara says, Asiri va'adai v'lo asiri safek. And the same thing is dam v'lo kesem. And if even there's the most remote possibility it came from somewhere else, then it's mutter. Because we only answered it when it's avadai. So sometimes I'm going to tell this to you in a place where it's more palatable and possibly even more fun. The Rogachover has a fascinating piece, and he says that we all know that Ben Hashmoshes is a Safek Yom and Safek Laila. Sometimes the Gemara says that we can consider it Yom for this, and sometimes the Gemara says you can't consider it Yom. So he says, what's the rule? How does the Gemara know which way to look at Ben Hashmoshes? And the Rogachover says as follows. Ben Hashmoshes has an aspect of day and has an aspect of night. So if the Torah says it has to be done in the day, so then you can do it Ben Hashmoshes too. Why? Because it has an aspect of day. But if the Torah has said it can't be done at night, then you can't do it Ben Hashmoshes because Ben Hashmoshes has an aspect of night. So even things that are 50-50 aren't 50-50. You understand what I just said? So you have to know everything, how it's processed to come to its conclusion. So Hoya V'Mikli Orcha means that it's there's a possibility, and that's good enough. Where this is nowadays from the big machlokesim I'm going to share with you is on Shvi'i Shel Pesach to cook kitnius for Shabbos. Okay? Where I come from, Chutz La'aretz, there's no such thing as Sfardim. Sfardim don't exist, and if they did exist, they blended into, there's no Kehilo Sfardim. Nowadays there is. But when you were growing up in Chicago, was there such a thing? There was a shul already? Okay. So a person wants to make a cholent for Shmini Shel Pesach. There's a question if you could do that. All right. Here in Eretz Yisrael, this question is much more Nogea because Shmini is not Pesach at all. There's nobody who has an inyan really not to eat kitnius on Shmini Shel Pesach because there is no Shmini Shel Pesach. It's just Parsha Shmini. Okay? It's always Parsha Shmini when it comes out like that. And the question is, are those foodstuffs muksa? And this is something which is very well discussed over the last 80 years, this question. But that's called that it's not available because if there's no Sfardim where you live, there's no tzad that you're going to be eating it today, right? Yeah, but that's if you're making more. That's called being marba bishulai, and you're allowed to do that for many reasons. Yeah, but you're allowed to do it sometimes. No, because you're going to be tasting from every pot. It says you do it. I'll just tell you, I had this sukkos, I had this shaila. I have a very close friend of mine, who he made a chasana right after sukkos, the week after sukkos. And his wife wanted to bake on Chol Hamoed for the Eiruv. Okay? And asked me, and I said, I can't help you. So I called a friend of mine who's a Rav, and he also is making a chasana right at that time. And he says you could do it if you make, out of every cake that you make, you eat some of it on Yom Tov. That's exactly the halacha we just learned. Read the halacha again. No, it's a hachanash question. Yeah, you're not allowed to cook on Chol Hamoed for after Yom Tov. You're not allowed to cook on Chol Hamoed for after Yom Tov. Very good. All right? But if you're cooking it for Yom Tov and there's leftovers, that you can do. Right? Okay. Sometimes you have more leftovers than you have ikr. Okay. That's exactly the concept that you're saying over here. What? You could use a knife and cut it off. I'm just saying that there's no isser of that. Okay. I'm going to read the Ramah. Pirish, Inyan Eiruv sheyavashel v'ya'afa b'yom tov l'Shabbos. Ima shabisha v'afa kfar me'erev yom tov l'shem Shabbos. If you already before Shabbos, Yom Tov started preparing for Shabbos. Nimsha shelo hischil malacha b'yom tov ela goymer ha'isai. Umuter l'aniach erev zeh afilu safek hashecha. You're allowed to make an erev Tavshilin even if it's ben hashmoshes. Now I'd like to see the beer halacha over here because it's very important. I Mishnah Berurah Masha Kasavnu the Isu Rakwi Divrei from Mishum Svar the Hoil Vikli Orchim, so it's not a vada that you're using it for Shabbos. V'lachein Mahani Eiruv. V'chein Kasav Magen Avrohom B'Shem Haran. V'Magen Avrohom Kasav B'Shem HaMaor B'Chem Moishin Heir Allah B'Divrei HaMaor. V'chein Das HaTaisvis. V'tirs Kaba D'mitamzeh Mutter La'afos Al-Vashel V'lo Chashin L'Achona D'Osir Minaraisa. Even though Hachana is also midaraisa, U'B'Makom D'Lashach Shvarzu the Hayel could go in Famach L'Chashecha Kasu Taisus V'Psachim the also midaraisa. Now, I would just like to share with you a fascinating thing. There are people who make an Erev Tavshilin, and they're soymech on their Erev Tavshilin. What do? Right before, I've seen this happen, right before the husband going to Mincha, and it's going to be Erev Shabbos, somebody remembers we didn't make Erev Tavshilin. So he takes some eggs and he throws them in the water and he cooks them up, and he's going to be soymech on that for Erev Tavshilin. Now, it happens to be in that case, it's probably okay. Why? How long do eggs take to cook?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, right? So if you went to daven with a minyan, right, it's going to be finished before Shkia. But if you want to make a gefilte fish, right, that takes a half hour, 45 minutes, you're going to run into a problem, according to some, that you're over on the Isser of Issa Daraisa of being mavashal and yontif shaloi l'tzarech, and you're not allowed to do that. So you have to make sure that the food, right? There's no oil. There's no oil. Okay. No, it's exactly the other way around. It's exactly the opposite. The ikar is on the food, and the challah is a secondary thing. Yeah, all right. Now, we'll Hashem will get there. Okay.
If a person is cooking the gefilte fish and maybe afterwards, he has a piece of gefilte fish, he eats a piece of gefilte fish and Yom Tov.
That's, he ate it raw.
Before Yom Tov, he puts it on. So it's Erev Yom Tov. He makes his Erev Tov like putting it in. He needs to go in for 30 minutes. So by the time it's, or 90 minutes, whatever it is, by the time it's done, it's completely Yom Tov. It's for sure Yom Tov. He comes home from the morning of Yom Tov.
It's on Shabbos.
So wait, he's making the Erev Tov on Yom Tov?
Yes.
Wait, he's just making an Erev Tov.
Okay. Theoretically, you can make Erev Tavshilin on Yom Tov. On Erev Yom Tov, there's no problem.
Okay, so your example was the guy is 24 hours late. It's almost Shabbos.
On your calendar, he's 24 hours late. On the Shulchan Aruch's calendar, he's on time. As long as you did it before Shabbos.
So why do we do it?
Because we also want that you started to cook on the weekdays for Shabbos. The line that the Mishnah Berurah said, inserted in, that you started cooking for Shabbos on Yom Tov, on Chol. Okay?
So when are you making on Yom Tov for Shabbos?
Yes.
Why are you doing it? You're not going to cook Shabbos.
That's why you're doing it now.
Nothing.
Very good.
What's the whole point of doing it?
Because you'll have food. You have food on Shabbos and Erev Tavshilin. What's the problem? Let's. I'll tell you. I'm going to back up. Let me ask you a Hilchos Shabbos question. If on a regular Shabbos, no Yom Tov involved, Shkia is at 6:00. At 5:45, I put up a pot of cholent that's going to take 2 hours to cook. It's only going to be Michael ben Drusoy after Rabbeinu Tam. Well, I just said something very simple. It's not going to be cooked until after Rabbeinu Tam. Now, you can figure out what is in there. That's your problem, not mine.
Does it make a difference if it's meat or
No.
not?
Makes zero difference. That is halacha in Shia, not do bishul. Okay? Now, if a person does that, Is he over on Bishul on Shabbos?
No,
Why not?
because he started it on time.
He did it on Shabbos. Shabbos afternoon.
Every Shabbos afternoon.
You know which word on Shabbos afternoon? You don't understand what I'm saying.
Friday afternoon.
Shabbos afternoon, 15 minutes before Shkia, he puts up a pot of food that takes 2 hours to get to Michael Ben Drusai. Is he over into the rice?
Yes.
Any knowers? Okay, so I'll stick up for the knowers. And I'll tell you this is a machlokes achronim. I'm going to share with you something that you know. If I put my clothes in my washing machine and I press the button right before Shkia, and those clothes, Erev Shabbos, and my clothes get washed on Shabbos, am I over on Malabin?
We don't have shvisus there.
It was not doing with Shvisus Kalim. I asked you, are you over on Malabin?
No.
No, why not?
Because you started it before Shabbos. So whatever happens, happens. You didn't do anything else
Right,
on
the
Shabbos.
same thing as putting on your fire on the the same thing as putting on your lights on a Shabbos clock, right? If you didn't do an action on Shabbos, so then we cannot tag you with being a Machal Shabbos. Is that now? The general rule is, in order to be chayiv a chatas on Shabbos, you have to do the action on Shabbos, and you have to have the accomplishment done on Shabbos. The exception to this rule is a av malacha called zoreah. If I take a seed and I put it in the ground, nothing's growing on Shabbos, right? So why would I be chayiv?
Imagine if you look at it, you'll see something happen.
You will see nothing growing. Maybe you'll see it falling apart, but you won't see anything growing.
That's the mice of Zorah. That's how you do Zorah.
Okay, according to some, that's the answer to the question. But this is an exception to the rule. All other things, machlokes.
Okay.
Machlokes, big machlokes. There's a reason we're learning this now, right? I'm happy that you're here. Okay, this is a very big machlokes.
Whether it's chatas or machlokes, whether you're allowed to do it.
Machlokes whether it's a chatas.
But everyone says you're not allowed to.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right.
That's for sure. It says at least tachana. Okay. Now, so therefore, this machlokes the Rashash the Avnei Nezer. This is a very big machlokes because also perhaps putting something on the fire, that's the end of your action. Anything that happens afterwards is, no, that's the exact opposite. That means that you did it, right? Okay, so this is, now based on this, that's where this shaila comes in. If I put something on the fire and it's only going to be ready on Matzah Shabbos, am I over on a malacha or not? If the malacha Shabbos is only putting it on the fire, then that's not the case. And there's a shaila, there's a Fursha Gemara that says a person is reida pas v'ratanor. Person put bread in, and he should take it out before it gets crusted, and therefore he could abort being over on Issa D'Oraisa. All these things are discussed. Now that's as far as how the malacha works. Your Erev Tavshilin has to be that on Yontif you have food that's left over for Shabbos. L'chatchila, we start cooking for Shabbos before Yontif, but at least if you did something on Yontif, you could use it for Yontif, and you carry it over and using it for Shabbos, that's your Erev Tavshilin. Okay? So here the Mishnah Berurah says this idea, but if it's not going to be done ready on Shabbos that you could eat it, so then you don't have a Erev Tavshilin. On Yontif. Okay, then you don't have a Erev Tavshilin. Yes. Okay. Okay, well, we'll discuss that maybe next week. Okay. Making it, okay. Now here it is. So here he says, that's called Rabbi Tzafat, the Malacha b'Shabbos she'en nasim b'Yom Tov, rak mitam hoil shori. The only reason you're allowed to do Malaches Shabbos on Yom Tov is because of Hoyel Mikli Archim. Umela Shamina Miacha, Deloy Shayach Hoyel, if you don't have a heter of Hoyel Mikli Archim, Osir Midaraisa. And if that's a Midaraisa, Erev Tavshilin, the Rabbanan are not going to be masakin something which is an Isser Daraisa. Or the Eila Poiski Isser Malacha B'Achona Echad, the Chol Malacha Shaykh Achona. The Chemov with a Hedya B'Melchamas. Ochen, Das HaRitzba Be'erevin, and many other Poiskim. The Isser Achona Lo Shaykh Rak B'Dover Chodosh, V'lo B'Meleches Afiyu Bisho, Du Tikkun Ba'alma. It has to be that you're creating something totally new, but just finishing something off, like cooking it, that's not a real Isser of Hachana. V'lochein Mahani Eiruv, De'ein Shaykh Be'ela Isser Hachana. There's no Isser of Hachana because the item is already here. Okay. And you're just moving. That's wonderful. What does that have to do with the items here? Is the item here or not? Why do you say it's a different item? Because you decided to say so.
Because it was raw and we moved it. It's just a different thing.
Okay. Well, the Arishonim would disagree with you. They say that it's the same item. You just furthered it along in its process. Hachana means that you created what I would call a yesh me'ayin. But if it's a yesh me'yesh, then that's called, it was here. I didn't say it's mutter. No, I said that it's not an Isser Hachana. Yes, same thing. Yes, same thing. That's just changing its form. That's not something. Okay. All right. Okay. That is okay. Rak Machoshoy. Okay. Because of the Rishum Zanogim Mahaktan Spal Arvis B'Yom Tov Shachal Be'erev Shabbos. Okay, well, let's get to the next line. That's important. Okay. The Melechas Shabbos Nasim B'Yom Tov. Rak B'Divrei Seifrim also Kadesh Lo Yikalu Gam B'Yom Tov L'Chol. The whole reason that you make Erev Tavshilin is because we're afraid if we're going to have you make your Shabbos things on Yom Tov, we're afraid you're going to make your weekday things on Yom Tov too. And that's the whole reason that it's also. V'chevi daita ba'agoyes v'smag v'chevi das v'syosef v'das Rambam v'chevi b'pashas v'degmar kol shekos v'chevi Moshe v'cholik al Avrohom shesiyel divrei Rambam das acheres v'chevi zevherech u'masik the Rambam koi okay v'tavi shul k'reprishis divrei Rashi Marin Kain v'kamer kadesh yom Montav v'Shabbos also kal v'choy melachol alma midaraisa shari l'Shabbos that you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos without any Eiruv. You're allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. That's not Isser Hachana. V'loy mishum hoyel. Okay, yezeh isa b'Yushalmi. V'af. Okay, just get that. Well, okay, near the after lechatchila b'varei tzarich lizor kedas harira bois hanal shehu inyan daraisa k'mo shekasu lachroinim mikol mokom b'shas hadchak yesham dekedaim rabosenu yeshenim ha'elo lismach aleihem b'inyan samach lechashecha. V'gam ki atur lo yatiku divrei atosfos liyitzamach lechashecha, and therefore you could make your Erev Tavshilin samach lechashecha. Okay, this is very important. Okay.
What are we supposed to get out? Like what are we thinking more?
That it's not a machlokes whether tzorchei Shabbos are nasa b'yontif, and therefore it's a machlokes when there's an Erev have to be finished. And therefore, he can be mekel samach lechashecha. As long as he did the action on Yontif, it's good enough, even though it got finished before. Okay.
I have a question. If you make it Erev Tavshilin because you're afraid of the fact you might have to cook from Yontif to Shabbos. Now, what if you don't? What if you do all the preparations prior to it? So you have to make an Erev, and if you do, wouldn't that be a bracha levatol?
Okay. The answer to that question is that you'll have to make an Erev Tavshilin because we hold they have to make Erev Tavshilin for lighting candles. Okay? But we would not make an Erev Tavshilin just for lighting candles. I would like to share with you something. Life has changed drastically over the last 30 years in many areas. When I got married, my wife used to bake challahs on Yom Tov. Now, your ovens don't allow you that option. We don't have that option to do it. But not only that, I'm willing to say that in this shul, I don't believe that there's anybody who cooks anything on Yom Tov altogether. Everybody has their stuff in the freezer, and they take it out, and they just reheat it. Right? Is that what happens in your house?
Some people have their own fridge.
What? Okay. All right, but you understand the concept. What are you cooking?
Are you talking about
On Yom Tov itself.
the Yom Tov itself? You just cook that fire.
So you're not cooking it. That's what I just said.
And Shavuos to make blintzes.
Okay, on Shavuos you make blintzes. All right. All right.
You're not going to actually put a feather the blintzes. It's already made. And you put it onto the fryer pan.
Your wife makes the bletlach on Yom Tov?
No, the wraps
Yeah.
already.
Well, why?
Why? Because the thing we have to make them is electric.
Oh, okay. Okay, so to tell you, life has changed. It wasn't like that. And there is extremely little cooking done on Yom Tov altogether.
It's heating up.
Right? So the question of malacha on Yom Tov, and even I would say the only cooking that I know of that people do on Yom Tov, some people, is they prepare their cholent if they're having a Shabbos afterwards.
Some people have barbecue.
Okay? I will just share with you the following statement. About 35 years ago, I was in Yerushalayim, and somebody asked me a question about kibui on a barbecue, and like a very specific kind of question, and I asked him, why are you asking me this question? So he said to me, this is the middle of El, he said, on the second day, Rosh Hashanah, we're planning to have company, and we're making a barbecue. So I said, I will not answer your question. You cannot make a barbecue on Rosh Hashanah. The end. So,
Gas and what? Gas and
That's because Rosh Hashanah, you don't make a barbecue.
right, that's right.
Why?
Because it's inappropriate.
If I saw my tefillas in the base of Mikdash, they were barbecuing.
Okay, what was their option? What was?
They were doing it though.
1 second. I didn't say that it's usher. I said it's inappropriate.
for circuits.
I'm not going to get involved in when I would allow it, when I wouldn't. I just said there is a tzura of what a yontif meal is supposed to look like. And a barbecue is not that tzura. That's just lacking something.
Nowadays, in the old days, how did they make their food?
Yeah, okay. It didn't look like a barbecue.
Yeah, it wasn't a barbecue.
Yes, they didn't have a Weber, but they still had a fire.
It wasn't a barbecue. Okay? Anyways, I'm just throwing that in because I feel very strongly about that it's important that I'll just share with you something that happened in this shul about 20 years ago. A parent from one of the mispalim came over to complain to me that their children only eat very religious hachsherim. And what's wrong with the regular hachsherim? What's wrong with the regular rabbanut? This is a lady who wears a sheitel. This is the question she asked me. So I said to her, I'd like to ask you a question. How long should a Shabbos meal take? So she was like fumbling. I said, in my estimation, a Shabbos meal should take somewhere between 45 minutes to 2 hours. If it takes more than 2 hours, it's already called a long meal. If it takes less than 45 minutes, it's too short. Now, if someone would ask me how long does a Shabbos meal have to take, my answer is a Shabbos meal should take no more than 6 minutes. All you have to do is eat a sandwich and bench. How long does that take? I think that the average person can do that in 6 minutes with Kiddush. So she looked at me horrified, and I said, what halacha are we missing? Right? So I said, you're not missing any halacha, you're just missing the Shabbos meal, right? But you're not missing any halacha, right? So there's an idea that we understand that certain mitzvahs have a tzura, how they have to be done. I'll just give you another place where you would agree with me. If a person picks up a little of an esrog and doesn't shake it, he's also yotzer. What would you say if you saw a guy pick up the little of an esrog, just put it down and not shake it? And you say to him, how can you shake it? He said, that's for the machmirim. What would you say? What?
I would say this is still good.
Oh, he did fulfill his mitzvah. He's yotzer.
So, no, it doesn't talk about Nanu. It doesn't say how long the Shabbos. There is a sif called Nanu in Shabbat. Maybe.
Yeah, and it also says min agbe nafik.
Okay, that's true, but there's a halacha called Nanu. No?
But that's a hitter mitzvah.
But there's a sif.
So when somebody asks, okay, the Shulchan Aruch also says you have to say Zmiris by your Shabbos table too, right?
Okay.
But you want to know what's Ikar Halacha, what Ikar Halacha is, and you have to know there's certain things that have a tzura. You have to keep to that tzura. It's very important. This is the place of the Gedolei Bale Minhagim, that they created for us the lifestyle that Shabbos is supposed to have. And just to mention, I'm very fond of mentioning this Ramban. The Ramban in Parshas Emor says that a person who keeps his store open on Shabbos, there is no malacha daraisa in having a store open on Shabbos. And he says, but a person who keeps his store open on Shabbos is a machal Shabbos midaraisa, because that activity is inappropriate. So even though we can't nail him on anything specific, but the whole behavior is wrong, and that's enough to make you machal Shabbos doraisa. Even though there's no place to pin him on. I didn't say that a person makes a barbecue is machal yontif doraisa. I'm just saying that there is a tzura which we try to keep to that tzura, because there's a certain end product which we're trying to get out of a Sudas Shabbos and a Sudas Yontif, and when people take shortcuts, those end products don't exist.
How does what she asked you?
What?
How does what she asked you?
Because not everything is a halacha, right? So just because it may be kosher, it's still lacking in something, right? So a person who is, I just tell you a line that I say many times nowadays. When a person buys his daled minim, he should be at least as not worried about the price as he is when he buys a suit. When I buy a suit that looks good on me, it feels good, it's not right. You can get one for half the price that you pay, right? So why don't you do that? It's also a suit. Okay? And I wasn't speaking to you. I was speaking to him, right? Right? Why don't you do that? Because you want a suit. So you also want a little bit of esrog. You should have the same amount of verb for your ruchnius as you do for your gashmius, at least. So it's not everything is dependent on what the bottom line is. All right.
I was cooking just to find out that Tavshilin, making tea in the TV show, would that consider cooking in that sense?
Yes.
So in that case, consider a lady Tavshilin in our house.
Okay. Coffee shachor would also be a bishul. Okay. But I didn't say that you're not going to find anything. I just say that we're on the way out. And people make tea sense, and then they don't have that problem, right? So I don't know if an English person does that. That I'm not right. It has to be the way it has to be, right? Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Einaf kabir in Yom Tov Rishon Yom Tov Sheni Shalgolos Imchal Yom Tov Sheni B'Erev Shabbos Gam Keros Lavashel Imlay De Eiruv Kama Kadesh Yom Tov Avafilo Litoise Kadesh Shleima Kula Kiva De Mitchila Choshav Sheitztarch LeYom Tov. Since there was a tzad they may use it for Yom Tov, that's good enough, and you can use it on Shabbos. Lavashelo Yarim Bazeh Kimavur B'Sif Chav Dalid. When do we say that it's called the Harama? That's Aser. Okay. Aidei Eiruv Mitchila. Kasuak Poiskim. The Heter HaEruv who af laman the Oma Malachas Shabbos ein nasim b'yontif midaraisa. Mikol mokom mahani Eiruv. The mikol mokom ein kan ela isim b'divrei seifim. The midaraisa amin hoyel v'iklu orchim. V'chazi leili yomtiv gufa. I could be using this food for yontif. Im kain Okay, I'll just tell you, I recall when I was a kid, in my house, my parents' house, we used to have what's said over in Yiddish, kol tzarua v'zov. We'd have all kinds of strange guests all the time. You know, not the ones that you send out invitations to. They would come. And I remember that one time on Yontif came a whole crowd of these guests. And my mother told my father, what am I going to feed them? So my father said, your Shabbos food. And my mother said, what am I going to do for Shabbos? My father said, you will cook again. Okay? That's called Hol B'Mikli Orchim. Okay, that's exactly what we're talking about.
One story that just happened to one of us.
I didn't say that. I just say that that's when it was a whole Afghan about the subject. No, but again, I guess could come later. There always is a possibility that guests may come. Okay. Okay. I'm going to talk about B'Shul Shabbos Rishas Adchak Yitiyah de Eiruv Shenechrev Zeh Kilu Kvar Hiskal Ha'ochem Erev Yom Tov L'Shabbos Rak Shegomer B'Yom Tov Kilu L'Kamon Because of Achronim the B'Yom Tov Shchal Yos B'Erev Shabbos Yizor L'Hakim Acholos Machol L'Shabbos Kidei Shigomer Melachta Mibod Yom Gadol. The food should be fully cooked while it's still daytime. The Samach L'Chashecha B'Zman De Lo Shayech Sheitztorach Lo L'Yom Tov Gufu Hala Ein Yesh Kan Less of the Malacha D'Oraisa. You have a question of it being a D'Oraisa. V'chei Yesh Lizor B'Macholim Shematim L'Shabbos Sheitamim B'Zman She'esher Yivashlim Shlish B'Shul Mibod Yom. Because of Itam Zeh, the Nogu L'Haktim Tfilas Arvis B'Shabbos Shechal Samach Yom Tov Kidei Shelo Yisacher Melachta L'Shula B'Yom Tov Ad Samach L'Shabbos. And therefore, they used to daven extra early on Shabbos that came following Yom Tov. V'ayim b'bir halacha. U'b'shas hadchak yesh lahakol b'Yom Tov sheni shechal b'erev Shabbos v'nisacher b'shula b'Shabbos atzal chashecha af b'Yom Tov rishon asher yesh lahakol b'shas hadchak v'lechatchila b'vali tzorich lizor b'chol prat Yom Tov rishon shehu b'doraisa. Okay, but depends what your options are. You know, what is the problem of davening earlier on Yom Tov? I'll just share with you the Taz has I just haven't seen this in many years. Just make sure it's still there, it hasn't gone away on me. Question is about making early Shabbos on Simchas Torah. Do you eat in the sukkah or not? On Shmini Atzeres, yeah.
In Israel.
In Israel. Why?
Because to you, it's a new day. I know it's still light outside, but to you, it's Shmini Atzeres. It's not Sukkot anymore.
Okay, I'm going to read. V'nira agais mirab David Tevel shelo oicho b'knisas Yom Tov Shmini Atzeres ad halayla. Why? D'im ken hayitzarech levorach leishev basukah. Okay. Kivan de dayan yom. Right? He doesn't have a problem of making early Yom Tov. He just says, if I make early Yom Tov, I'm going to have to eat in the sukkah. And I'm going to have to make a leishev. Right? So you're making a leishev on Shmini Atzeres, right? Right? That's his problem. So he doesn't like this stira. Because of Rashal Raya Lezeh, Machmas, Brocha Leishev B'Sukkah, Dim Lo Yomer Oisai, Zu, okay, right, Cheves, V'Brocha Seid Maka, Avo Lechu V'Yatzu V'Brocha, Hainu Lecho B'Sukkah Mi B'Od Yom, V'Lo Loimru Oven Gadolhu. To not make a bracha, that's an Aveira, because you're mechuyev to make a bracha. Ve'ino Medkivu De Moisef Michol Ala Kodesh, Im Kein Over Yom Zeh, Einoi, Nidem Moisefim B'Tfila, Kira Ashechon Rav Tzoli Shal Shabbos, B'Erev Shabbos, Avolasois Laila, Hare Kriya Shema Shal Arbis Hu Daraisa B'Shaito. It has to be at night. Oh, Minatayra and Roy Lismor Bal Oimer Bilal Shabbos Achar Kiddush Ad Alayla Kasher Kasavti B'Simen Yud Gimel V'Lo Omer Gam Kein Kedisasi Adodi Avastira Shem Yom Relation B'Sukkah Cholhu V'Kiddush Lamu Ba. Why is saying Kiddush? V'Yom Yom Tevu Leisha B'Sukkah Lamu Ba. You know, like we're still lost what day this is. Okay? This is a very long piece, and there's all kinds of different poskim that have what to say about the subject. The bottom line is that we don't make early Shmini Atzeres because we don't want to run into this problem. But it doesn't say that you can't make Shabbos and Yontif. No.
Part of it is in Kiddush. It says make a Shabbos.
Yeah, but you could be Makadish. And nobody over here says it's a problem with Kiddush. You could theoretically, that stira doesn't bother us because you're making it. That's a sukkah problem if you're a lady. Well, you don't have to eat in the sukkah. They don't have to eat in the sukkah. I don't see that there's a problem. Okay, we'll stop over here.